Hello, everybody. Helen Davis here from Blended Therapy. It's another beautiful day here in the UK, or at least in this little bit of the UK. How are you doing this week? How are you doing today? I've been reading recently, rereading one of the key yoga texts, the Sutras of Patanjali. I still haven't quite got my head around the pronunciation. And this is a text that was, well, very little's known about the author, or possibly authors, but the text is believed to have been put together around 300 years before the birth of Christ. And this text is a beautiful guide to what yoga is. It's the source of a quote that some of you may have heard me use before. It opens with the words in this particular translation: yoga is the settling of the mind into silence. When the mind is settled, we are in our essential nature, which is unbounded consciousness. Our essential nature is usually overshadowed by the activity of the mind. And the rest of the text is basically explaining how we get there, how we settle our mind, what we achieve when we can do that. But there's a particular piece that I read last night that I wanted to read this morning. Hi, Bradley. Because I found it a really helpful piece of advice for life in general, but also at the moment. And indeed, the text I've got here at the moment is a translation by Alistair Shearer, but I'm also reading from a different translation. And in the other one, it said, even if you have no interest in following the path of yoga, this is a pretty good rule to live your life by. So I'm going to read what it says in here. The mind becomes clear and serene when the qualities of the heart are cultivated. Then goes on to list them. That's just 4. Friendliness towards the joyful, compassion towards the suffering, happiness toward the pure, and impartiality toward the impure. So from my reading and my understanding, just to go through each of those in turn: friendliness towards the joyful. In other words, when we see someone who is happy, maybe for something they have got or done, whether that's something material or something more etheric, more spiritual, including if they have got or achieved something that we wish we could. Being friendly towards them and being happy for them, as opposed to allowing ourselves to slip into negativity about the fact that we don't have whatever it is. Compassion towards the suffering, well, that doesn't really need any explanation or translation, but in terms of how easy it is to do, sometimes when we see people suffering, it's easy to go into our heads and think that they should do X, Y, or Z to change that situation. Obviously, there are situations when suffering is simply something that invokes compassion. But if we feel that somebody is suffering through their own fault, if we think there is an obvious answer for how to resolve what is causing them suffering, it can be easy to be judgmental, even inside our own heads. Hi, Helen. And if we are triggered by the feelings they're experiencing, sometimes without even realizing that, can make us go off on a different approach, into being judgmental, into not being compassionate. Happiness towards the pure. So again, for me, this is it's similar to the first one in that it's being filled with joy when we see something that is someone that is happy in themselves, somebody that, or something that is pure or innocent, allowing that to fill us with joy. And then finally, and I think for me at the moment, this feels the real crux of this, the most important one for me to be working on, impartiality towards the impure. Now, the other translation uses the word wicked rather than impure. But whatever translation you use, however you interpret it, when we see people, hear people, in this current scenario, read online about people doing things that we don't approve of, that we don't think are the right way of doing things, can we cultivate impartiality rather than allowing ourselves to get het up by it? And it's the same thing as the meme that's been going around, which is so valuable at the moment, about the things that we can change and the things that we can't change, things that are under our control, the things that aren't under our control. One of the things that is not under our control is how other people react and respond in this situation or any situation. So for me, I found it really helpful when I was reading this last night to connect to that idea of being impartial to people whose actions are not as ours would be or as we think theirs should be. So I'm sharing that this morning because that's what is at the top of my mind. I hope you find it useful. If it's helpful to sit with it while we meditate together, then do. If not, then let it go. And if it's useful at some point, it'll pop back in when you need it. So meanwhile, I thought today, for the last time for now, we would focus once more on alternate nostril breathing, Nadi Sadhana. If you feel you're comfortable with how this practice works, then just take your own time to move into it. I will talk you through it gently to start with, but if you don't, as I say, feel free to just go at your own pace. So as always, finding that connection into the ground with your feet, with your sitting bones, letting your spine start to be supported a little more by the ground beneath, by your connection to the ground. Let your eyes close gently if that's comfortable for you, or simply soften your gaze and rest the eyes downwards. And turn your awareness to your breath, letting your hands rest palms up on your knees or your thighs. And just for a couple of breaths, feeling how the breath moves through your body with your hands in a relaxed and comfortable position. And then for a couple more breaths, allowing the palms of your hands to open and blossom like a flower in the sunlight, welcoming in the warmth, the energy, the light through the palms of your hands. And noticing what effect that has on your breath. And then bringing the tips of each finger in to touch the tip of the thumb. So the two hands close up like flower buds in the evening, like a lotus bud or a tulip blossom. Closing. And notice the effect that shift in the mudra, the hand gesture, has on your breath this morning, today. And then in your own time, when you feel ready, You can either move into alternating from one hand to the other, or to doing a few breaths on one side and then a few breaths on the other. Do what works for you today, for as long as feels right. I'm going to move straight into alternating the breaths. So on the top of an inhalation, I release the fingers of the left hand, keep the right hand closed. Breathe out, breathe in. Release the left hand, close the left hand, release the right hand, exhale, inhale. At the top of the exhalation, close the right hand, release the left hand, exhale, inhale. Release the right hand, close the left, exhale, inhale. Close the right, release the left, exhale, inhale. Close the left, release the right, exhale, inhale. And I invite you to continue with that, using one or more breaths with each change of mudra, for as long as it feels right for you and helpful for you. And when you're ready, ideally, but not essentially, after you've had the right hand open and the left hand closed, then release the fingers of both hands and simply breathe in your own normal, easy way. And if you haven't already done so, the next time that your left hand fingers are closed and your right hand fingers are open, and you've completed that breath, then release the left hand as well. Let both hands relax and return to a breath through both nostrils, through the whole body. And if it feels right to you, you may want to bring the two hands together with one palm resting inside the other, or you may wish to leave them where they are. Just tune in for a few more moments to the quality of the breath as it moves through both nostrils, through your whole body. If your mind starts to wander, bring your awareness back to your feet, back to your connection to the ground, so that your spine is supported, your head is resting on your spine, and your mind can return to your breath. Om Shanti Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.